Every time you explain yourself, you lose something. Not dramatically, not all at once, but consistently, quietly, every single time you offer a justification that nobody asked for. You make a small transfer. A small piece of your authority moves from you to the person you are explaining yourself to. And the most dangerous part is that it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like honesty, like accountability, like being a reasonable person who respects other people enough to explain their thinking. The Stoics saw it differently. They saw unnecessary explanation for exactly what it is, the public announcement that you are not yet fully convinced by your own decisions. And the people around you receive that announcement at the subconscious level, even when they respond with nothing but polite acknowledgement. Today, I am giving you 10 lessons from the Stoic tradition on how to stop, how to reclaim the authority that constant explanation has been quietly bleeding from you, and how to become the kind of person whose actions speak so clearly that words of justification become unnecessary. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Silence is not weakness. It is strategy. The first thing most people misunderstand about the Stoic approach to silence is that they confuse it with passivity, with having nothing to say, with backing down. Silence, used correctly, is none of those things. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." But he went further than that. He wrote about the specific discipline of not speaking when speech would serve only to defend the ego rather than advance understanding. The man who speaks to fill every silence, who explains every decision, justifies every choice, responds to every raised eyebrow, is a man whose need for approval is visible to everyone in the room. The man who is comfortable with silence communicates something entirely different. He communicates that his internal state does not depend on constant external validation, that he can sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood and remain intact. That is not weakness. That is the most sophisticated form of social power available. Lesson 2. Your actions need no defense. Epictetus said, "Do not explain your philosophy. Embody it." The man who lives correctly, who makes decisions from genuine values, who follows through on what he says, who treats people with the consistency of someone who is not performing a character, does not need to explain himself. His actions explain him. The problem is that most people live with a gap between their self-image and their actions. They believe they are a certain kind of person, but their behavior does not consistently demonstrate it, and so they compensate with explanation. They narrate the intention behind the action because the action alone does not communicate what they want it to. The Stoic solution is not better explanation. It is eliminating the gap. Becoming the person whose actions require no narration because they speak clearly enough on their own. This week, instead of explaining an upcoming decision before you make it. Let the results speak. And observe how much of the explanation was genuinely necessary versus how much of it was preemptive self-defense against judgment that never arrived. Lesson 3. Stop seeking permission disguised as consultation. There is a specific habit that is easy to mistake for wisdom, and that is actually a form of weakness dressed in the language of collaboration. Seeking permission, disguised as asking for input. Genuine input seeking sounds like, "I have made my assessment. I want to pressure test it. I am open to information I might have missed." Permission seeking sounds like, "I have made my assessment, but I need you to tell me it is acceptable before I can fully commit to it." The difference is internal, but it produces completely different external results. The person seeking input arrives at conversations with a position. They may update it based on what they learn, but they arrive with it. The person seeking permission arrives with a question. Is this okay? And they wait for the answer before they can proceed. Marcus Aurelius sought counsel throughout his reign. He was surrounded by advisors. But the decision was always made internally first, held with the confidence of a man who trusted his own assessment, and then tested against outside perspective. Practice arriving at decisions before you seek input. Fully. Let your consultation be genuine refinement, not social permission. Lesson 4. Every reaction you show is information you give away. When someone provokes you with a comment, a challenge, a dismissal, and you visibly react, you have given them something valuable. You have shown them the location of the lever and confirmed that it works. Cato the Younger was insulted publicly by some of Rome's most powerful men. He was mocked, challenged, marginalized. He continued. He did not respond to insults with counter-insults. He did not explain himself to people who were not interested in understanding him. He continued doing what he assessed was correct, and let his consistency answer every provocation. Epictetus wrote, "It is not what happens to you that disturbs you, but your judgment about what happens to you." The reaction is the judgment made visible, and when you make your judgments visible to everyone who attempts a provocation, you invite more provocation, not less. Practice receiving provocations without response, not suppression, genuine disengagement. The reaction that does not come cannot be used against you. Lesson 5. Your peace is not available for negotiation. Most people treat their internal peace as something that can be disrupted by external events, and then spend significant energy trying to restore it after each disruption. The Stoics approached this differently. They treated internal peace not as a state to be maintained between disruptions, but as a baseline that external events simply did not have the authority to alter. Seneca wrote, "I shall never be frightened when the last hour comes. I am already prepared. I shall plan no further ahead than that day." The man who has settled the internal account, who knows what he values, who holds it without apology, who is prepared for difficulty rather than expecting ease, is not negotiating his peace against each new external condition. He has already established it. Your peace is not something other people get to bid on. It is not available in exchange for their approval. It is yours, held internally, maintained daily, defended by the simple practice of not handing it over. Lesson 6. Words without action erode your authority completely. Every promise made and not kept, every intention announced and not followed through on, every commitment offered in a moment of motivation and quietly abandoned when the motivation fades, each one makes a withdrawal from the account of your credibility. And credibility, once depleted, is extraordinarily slow to rebuild. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Not announce what a good man should be. Be one. The distinction is between performance and embodiment, between the narration of the intention and the delivery of the result. The Stoic approach to language is precise. Say less than you intend to do. Deliver more than you announced. Let the gap between your words and your actions consistently surprise people in the direction of more, not less. Lesson 7. Distance creates respect. There is a counterintuitive principle that the Stoics understood clearly, and that most people discover only through the painful experience of its opposite. The more accessible you are, the less you are valued. Not because people are calculating, because availability signals that you have nothing more pressing than the current interaction, that your attention is abundant and therefore inexpensive. The man whose attention is difficult to get, not through performance or game playing, but through genuine focus on things that matter, is a man whose attention, when it arrives, carries weight. Seneca deliberately limited his social exposure, not from misanthropy, from the recognition that undifferentiated availability produced undifferentiated respect. Be selective, not as a social tactic, as a genuine expression of where your real priorities are. Lesson 8. Know when to walk away, and do it without announcement. The most common version of this mistake, the dramatic exit, the announcement that you are done, the explanation of why this relationship, this situation, this conversation is no longer worth your time. The explanation returns all the power to the person you are leaving, because explanation requires response, and the moment you require their response, you have not actually left. You are still there, waiting. Marcus Aurelius withdrew from situations, from people, from dynamics that were not productive, consistently throughout his reign, without announcement, without drama, without the offer of a final argument to be won or lost. Walk away when walking away is the correct action. Let the walking be the statement. Let the distance do what explanation cannot. Lesson 9. Your standards require no one's approval. The standard you hold yourself to privately. The specific expectations you have of your own behavior when no one is watching. That standard is yours. It does not require a committee. It does not require a vote. It does not improve through external validation. Epictetus held himself to standards that his circumstances had no business supporting. A slave, legally owned, without freedom in any external sense, holding himself to the internal standard of a free man, because he understood that the standard is internal. And internal things cannot be taken by external circumstances. Your standard is yours. Hold it without asking for permission to hold it. And observe how much energy you recover when you stop seeking approval for the expectations you have of yourself. Lesson 10. Become impossible to read. The man who narrates his internal process, who explains his motivations, announces his plans, justifies his decisions, is a man whose next move is already visible before he makes it. The man who acts without narration, who delivers results without announcing intentions, is a man whose next move is genuinely unknown, and unknown is powerful. Marcus Aurelius governed in this way. His Meditations, the document that reveals his internal life most completely, were private, never intended for public consumption. The internal process was his. The external result was everyone else's. Protect your internal process, not from insecurity, from the recognition that some of your most important work happens in the space before anyone else knows about it. And that space deserves protection. 10 lessons. One instruction underneath all of them. Stop narrating. Start delivering. Let your consistency build the reputation that your explanations have been trying to manufacture. The man who needs no explanation is not cold. He is not arrogant. He is simply a man whose actions have become so consistently aligned with his values that words of justification have become genuinely unnecessary. That is where you are going. Start by saying less today than you plan to. If this gave you something useful, subscribe. Stoicism every week. No motivation. No fluff. Just what actually holds up.